when I was in Kodai school, I I was already hung up on motorcycle. I don't know why. Well, kids are. So I was 15 or 16. And me and this German friend of mine named Chris went to a local mechanic. We often went to this mechanic's place because he always had an old motorbike around. And he had a Norton, a 1937 or 38 Norton. I'm not sure what year it was, but it was a real clunker. And we said, will it start? He says, it might start if you give me 100 rupees and take it. And he wanted 100 rupees for this old piece of junk. So we raised 100 rupees somehow. Our allowances were 20 rupees a month or something, so it must have taken quite a bit. And so we started working on it before he worked on it. We just worked on it, meaning we greased everything, made sure that the wheel spun, that the chain was tight enough, all these basic things. We didn't know anything about the spark and the condensers and all this kind of stuff. And so he worked on that and one day got it started. And it didn't have a muffler on it, just had a straight pipe. Wow! It sounded beautiful to us. So we did put a silencer on it, and we decided to ride it down the Ghat Road. That's about a 40-kilometer Ghat Road down to the bottom. We knew we could get down because it's downhill. Whether we could get back up again was another thing. We didn't worry about that. So one early morning, we're two kids with no license, and he put a fake, an old plate from some other motorbike on the back so the cops wouldn't stop us. I don't know if any cop would stop us anyway. And we started it off. We had a couple of chapatis with us and stuff like that, and we drove down the Ghat Road, absolutely feeling like heroes, on our motorcycle. This is a big clunker. It's a big, heavy bike. It was a 500cc single. And so we got down to the bottom, and once we were on the straightaway and there were no more curvy roads, we let it rip. We must have been going, I don't know, maybe 80 or 100 kilometers per hour. It seemed like we were flying, And then we were careful, though, because there were cows and dogs and everything else on the road, but it was an open stretch. And then we stopped for a while down there and decided, well, we better head back because it's going to take us quite a while to get up the Ghat. So we started back up the Ghat Road very reluctantly because we were, like we were feeling free. And we got about, I don't know, not even 6 or 8 kilometers up the Ghat Road, and suddenly it just went clonk like that, just stopped. Obviously, this piston had frozen up. It must have overheated the bike like mad. And, it was just so old and decrepit. And luckily, a cement truck was going up to Kodai, and these guys helped us haul this huge thing into the back. And we laid back on these cement bags and drove all the way up to Kodai. That was the first big motorcycle experience I had. But when I graduated from high school in 1960, I was 16 years old, and my mother figured that I was too young to go to college in America. Wait a year. So I said, sure. So I decided to come to Mysore, right here, and moved to Moochhala. I stayed at the house of a toy maker called Veerappan. And it was arranged by Kamala Devi because she was a doyen of all these toy makers and stuff like that. And so they put me up, and what I was doing is I was learning taxidermy at the South India taxidermy studio from a guy who used to work for Vanningen, the famous taxidermist. So I was learning from the guy who had learned from the big shots. And I had a lot of very interesting time with him, learning how to stuff snakes and birds and all sorts of things. I already knew a bit about taxidermy, and I was quite interested in it. It was even going to become a profession at one stage in maybe that's the answer. Maybe I'd be a taxidermist. Anyway, but getting back to motorcycles, I was living in Moochhala, but I was a volunteer at the Mysore Zoo. So I'd have to go back and forth, and it wasn't easy crossing town on a bus and all. So I looked for a motorbike, and I met a motorcycle mechanic called Baba Set. They're all Muslim, all the mechanics there were. And he had a 1943 Triumph 350 single cylinder, which was in working condition. And it was made the same year I was born. I thought, man, that's saying something, okay. But it was a so-called military bike, Triumph military bike, brought over during the Second World War by the British, by the thousands. And so Baba said, fixed it up pretty well. I bought it by selling my air gun. I had this air gun. I was terrible. I was like the equivalent of a bird watcher. I was the bird killer, you know. But I was stuffing them. I was mounting them. So there was a bit of science in my bloodthirstiness. But the point was, I needed this motorbike, and so I sold the air gun for 1,000 rupees and bought the bike for 850 or something like that. And I used the other 150 to get it painted metallic peacock blue. Okay, so here I was, 16 years old, with my metallic peacock blue motorbike. Man, I was on top of the world, really. And I drove it all over the place. I used to drive it to Chamarajnagar and out to Guntapuram, out to where I used to go hunting out there. I drove it all the way to Kodaikanal, where I'd been at school, to impress all my old friends. You know, wow, you know, there's a kid who graduates and comes back on a motorbike. I considered myself a big hero. By that time, I was smoking cheruts, little cigars and stuff like that. Crazy kid. And yeah, so I always think that if I had kept that motorcycle in Greece and just wrapped it up and kept it here, when I came back to India, or even now, what a priceless piece of machine that would be, because it was in such perfect condition when I left. Very sad. Then I went to college, Wyoming, and everyone said the winters here are hell, you've got to get a car. I said, I don't like cars, I want to get a motorbike. And everyone said, you're totally nuts, you don't drive a motorcycle in winter, the roads are all icy. Anyway, I didn't listen to them. And I saw this ad for an AJS 500 single, in other words, and for, I think, $175 or something really cheap, in running condition. So we went and got that and drove it back through a blizzard back to Laramie from a place called Casper, about 150 kilometers. And there was so much snow on the road that we had to drive off the road the whole way on the gravel. And you imagine how long that would have taken. Anyway, it took hours and hours. The cops stopped us several times, wondering what are these crazy kids doing, you know? We had we looked like polar bears. We were so full of clothes, you know, just to keep warm. Yeah. And I drove that throughout my whole college career. Yeah, when I came back to India, that's the first bike I got, was a Jawa. And that's what, a 250 single, I think they are, yeah. And drove that all over the place. That's the bike we took to Sri Lanka with us, actually. Yeah, that was a 67 Jawa, yeah, 1967 Jawa. And then I had a Royal Enfield Bullet, which was really great. We took that to the Andamans and drove it all over the place there. But it was very interesting, because then when I read Che Guevara's Motorcycle Diaries, his also was a Norton 1938 or something like that. If we had only known, you know, because we were enamored of this guy, sorry, my mind is blank. Castro, when he was doing his revolution down there, we were teenagers, and it had a very attractive feel to it. He was going to kill Batista and his henchmen and all that, and save the Cuban people, and all the bullshit that he did later, and killed so many people himself. Okay, it's not good, but at that time it was a very exciting time. We were all going to leave India and go and join him. And some American kids did too. We found out later.